Hi, my name is Corey Biazzo, and I'm a practicing American civil litigation attorney, and you are watching Executive Coup. In today's episode, we're going to briefly discuss a new wrongful deportation matter where the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts has ordered the Trump administration to return an individual who, similar to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, had entered the United States unlawfully. Nonetheless, he was denied his Fifth Amendment procedural due process rights under the U.S. Constitution. As a reminder, the late Justice Antonin Scalia wrote the majority opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court in a case named Reno versus Flores out of 1993, where Justice Scalia wrote, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in the context of removal proceedings. Constitutional protections apply to all individuals within the United States, regardless of their legal status. That has been the law of the land since the U.S. Constitution was enacted on June 21st, 1788. The case before us today, captioned DVD versus U.S. Department of Homeland Security, involves an individual who entered the U.S. illegally from Guatemala. Prior to this individual's removal from the U.S. to Mexico, an immigration judge entered an order forbidding his removal from the United States to Guatemala due to an asylum claim under U.S. immigration laws, where the immigration judge found it more likely than not that this individual would suffer serious harm if sent back to Guatemala. Judge Brian Murphy of the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts wrote in his memorandum and order on plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction, quote, 2 days later, and without any notice, he was placed on a bus and sent to Mexico, a country where he was previously held for ransom and raped. He had said during his immigration proceedings that he was afraid of being sent to Mexico and even presented evidence of the violence he had experienced there. But the immigration judge told him, consistent with this court's understanding of the law, that he could not be removed to a country other than his native Guatemala, at least not without some additional steps in the process. Those necessary steps and his pleas for help were ignored. As a result, he was given up to Mexico, which then sent him back to Guatemala, where he remains hiding today. End quote. In discussing this individual's background, the court stated that this individual illegally entered the United States in March 2024. He was denied asylum and deported to Guatemala. In April 2024, he then again entered Mexico on his way to the United States. In Mexico, he was raped and held hostage until a family member paid a ransom. And this is according to the court record, after arriving to the U.S. after being released from his captors, he was apprehended by the U.S. Border Patrol again. In court proceedings, this individual asked for assurances that he would not be sent back to Mexico. Judge Murphy stated in his order, at the close of that hearing, the government's attorney clarified with the immigration judge that because Guatemala was the country of removal designated on the individual's order of removal, that was the only relevant country he could potentially be sent to. However, as previously stated, 2 days after being granted withholding of removal and with no advance warning, in violation of his Fifth Amendment procedural due process rights, he was put on a bus and sent to Mexico. Despite asking to speak with his attorney, he was refused. This also touches on the Fifth Amendment, on right to counsel under the Fifth Amendment. The judge went on to state that the Trump administration submitted a declaration sworn under oath that this individual, prior to his removal, affirmatively stated that he had no fear of being sent to Mexico. However, the individual through counsel filed his own sworn declaration stating that he was only told about Mexico as it was happening and that he begged to speak to his attorney, but he was denied. The Trump administration has since retracted its prior sworn statement about the removed individual, saying he had no issue with being deported to Mexico, despite his claimed past traumatic experience there. Judge Murphy stated in his order, quote, "Defendants' retraction of their prior sworn statement makes inexorable the already strong conclusion that he is likely to succeed in showing that his removal lacked any semblance of due process." Judge Murphy stated in his order, quote, "While mistakes obviously happen, the events leading up to the decision are troubling. The court was given false information upon which it relied, twice, to the detriment of a party at risk of serious and irreparable harm." Judge Murphy concluded his order by stating, quote, "Defendants are hereby ordered to take all immediate steps, including coordinating with plaintiff's counsel to facilitate the return of the individual to the United States. Defendants shall file a status report within 5 days of this order, updating the court as to the status of the individual's return." In a seeming wink and nod at the Trojan horse in President Trump's, quote, "one beautiful bill," pending potential enactment before Congress, as covered in episode 18, Judge Murphy wrote, quote, "The court exercises its discretion to waive the requirement to post a bond under Rule 65 subsection C of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure." Judge Murphy referenced a case from the U.S. First Circuit Court of Appeals finding, quote, "ample authority for the proposition that the provisions of Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 65 subsection C are not mandatory and that a district court retains substantial discretion to dictate the terms of an injunction bond." Keep following Executive Coup for further updates on these matters and others related to the apparent executive coup attempt that is unfolding in the U.S. federal government at the direction of President Donald J. Trump. Thank you.